Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be fun. I am making some sourdough English muffins, and so of course I wanted to bring you guys along. I am going to be using freshly milled flour today, so this will be freshly milled sourdough English muffins. So we'll go ahead and get started with milling our wheat, and you can use a variety of wheat, so pick your favorite. I'm going to use a combination of two different kinds. I'm going to use probably a little more than half of hard white wheat, and the rest will be spelt, which is my favorite. So I'm going to go ahead and weigh out 270 grams of wheat berries, and then I will get that milled. Turn on our scale, set it to grams. All right, and I'm gonna do about 150 grams of the hard white. Okay. All right, and then we will do the rest with spelt. Feel free to experiment with different grains. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and mill these, and then we'll set those aside. All right, so our flour is ready to go. We're gonna just leave this aside, and we're gonna weigh out our sourdough starter. So we need 113 grams of our sourdough starter. So I fed this probably 3 days ago or so and got it going nice and strong. And then I've had it in the fridge since then, and it is nice and bubbly. But yeah, so I just took it out of the fridge maybe 10-15 minutes ago, and I'm just gonna go ahead and use it. Your sourdough starter, it doesn't really matter if it's super duper active, so you can use it straight out of the fridge, but I did feed it a few days ago. All right, so I'm gonna measure out, like I said, 113 grams. That's too much. It's quite thick right now because it's so cold. All right, there we go. All right, I'll set this aside, and then I am going to grab my milk. All right, we got our milk, so we're gonna do 240 grams of milk. All right. Oh, I got 241. All right, so I'm just going to mix this a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and add my sugar. And we are gonna do 12 grams of sugar. You could also use honey if you wanted to, or omit it altogether, and that's fine. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to just mix this really well until the sourdough starter has pretty much dissolved into the milk. So now we will add our flour that we milled to our sourdough starter mixture. And we're just gonna stir this up until everything's all wet. I like to use my Danish whisk for this. At this point, it's looking pretty moist and not super doughy. It's like a very wet dough right now, and that is good. It's gonna allow our sourdough starter to really get in there and do its job at breaking down all of the flour. So, all right, so I'm just gonna cover this and set it aside in a nice warm place in the kitchen. I tend to use my cabinets around my refrigerator because the refrigerator really tends to warm up those cabinets a bit. So I am just gonna set this aside and let it do its job for roughly 8 hours or so, give or take. Usually I do this overnight so that we could have them for breakfast. So I would start them maybe 8, 9 o'clock at night, and then just leave it out on the counter overnight. And then come morning time when I get up, I would go ahead and do the next step and get them ready for breakfast. But I want to have these for dinner. We're gonna do a kind of breakfast for dinner today. So I am going to, that's why I started them this morning at roughly 8:30. And I will have them ready for dinner this evening. So yeah, I'm gonna set these aside, and then later today we will come back and do the next step. All right, you guys, it's been about 8 hours or so, maybe 8.5 hours. For you, it might have been overnight, and we are ready to go to the next step with our sourdough English muffins. So this is kind of what it looks like. It's still pretty wet. We are gonna roll this out onto some flour. So typically, whenever I have leftover flour that I mill, and I don't throw that away, I put it in a Ziploc baggie and stick it in the freezer for stuff like this, for if I just need to sprinkle some on the counter and stuff like that. Or sometimes I'll just use this to feed to my sourdough starter. So I am going to just go ahead and sprinkle some flour out on the counter. And get this out of the bowl. So usually I have a bowl scraper that I would use. It's perfect for this, but I broke it. It cracked in half. So I can't scrape my bowl quite as elegantly as I used to. All right. Now we'll set that aside. It's pretty wet and sticky. I'm gonna put a little bit more on top just so I don't stick to it too much. So we're gonna just spread this out into kind of a rectangle for now. And we are gonna add our baking soda and salt we left out. Okay. So here is my baking soda. All right, I'm gonna use half a teaspoon of baking soda. I'm just gonna sprinkle it around on here. And then 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay, and then we're just gonna kind of knead this in a little bit until it is mixed. And I'm just gonna add, I try to add minimal flour to it, but it is quite sticky. And I'm really just kneading this enough to kind of get that salt and baking soda all mixed into the dough. Yes, this is a very easy recipe. I've never had it not turn out perfectly. So even when I've messed it up, I one time forgot to, I had it all laid out and I forgot to put my baking soda and salt in it, and I had shaped my English muffins and everything, and then I realized, oh my goodness, I forgot that, and I had to redo it, and they still turned out perfectly, even though I had worked them so much. All right, so that is looking good to me. Sprinkle some more out here. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and roll this out a little bit. I probably don't even need a rolling pin, but so I'm going for about 1/2 inch thick or so. And again, you can double this if you want to make like a bunch for a few days or whatever. And I just use a wide mouth canning ring to cut mine out. So just like you would if you were cutting cookies or anything like that. And I will cut those, and then we're gonna grab some parchment paper and put it by the stove. And we're gonna lay these over on the parchment paper with some cornmeal. All right, that was a silly place for me to cut. All right, so I'm gonna grab my parchment paper. I like to have them by the stove. So that when I go to cook them, I don't have to like walk across the kitchen at that point. But I have my cornmeal right here that I'm gonna sprinkle over the parchment paper, and then I'll set the English muffins on top, and then I'll sprinkle some more cornmeal on bottom. And I use a GMO, non-GMO cornmeal as well. So I just sprinkle some of the cornmeal on the parchment paper. And then we just lay our English muffins on top. And then I do a little sprinkling on the top. Sometimes I like to kind of rub it in there. Just a classic English muffin look. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish cutting the rest of these. Okay, looking great. All right, this one will be a little bit smaller, but we don't want it to go to waste. So we will still cook this one. All right. All right, so I'm just gonna cover these with a clean towel, and we're gonna let these sit here and rise again for about 1 more hour. Okay, it's been 1 hour, or just a little bit more than an hour, and I've got my cast iron skillet on the stove, and I'm heating it over a medium heat, and we're gonna be cooking our English muffins right in our skillet on the stove top. So I'm just gonna uncover my English muffins. Okay, and I like to just use a fork to flip them. So I'm gonna do about 3 in my skillet at a time. That's what I can fit. And I'm gonna cook them for about 5 to 7 minutes on each side on medium heat. And I do not put any butter or anything on the bottom of the skillet. I just put them right on, and I don't have any problems with them sticking or anything like that. All right, so I'm just gonna cook these all up and we'll see how they turn out. We are done with our English muffins. They look so good, and they are so good. Look at them. Beautiful English muffins with freshly milled spelt and hard wheat. So good. So I am going to cut these in half and toast them a little bit in the oven and cook up a few sausage patties and eggs and make some breakfast sandwiches. So these are definitely not gonna last long. The recipe works fabulous if you wanna go ahead and double it so it lasts a couple days. If you wanna put them in the freezer, you could do that too. But I hope that you guys try this recipe. If you do, please leave a comment below on how it turned out, how you liked them, and all of that. I always love to read your comments, and I read every single one. So thank you guys for joining me today, and we will see you again real soon. God bless, and have a wonderful rest of your day. All right, we are done with our English muffins. They look so good, and they are so good. Look at them. Freshly milled, freshly milled, yeah, what do you call it? Pause. Hold on. Okay, shh, I'm still recording.